What's the most inaccurate thing your child has ever been taught in school? 1. My son was in the 4th grade when his science teacher called furious that he had been disrespectful in class. I asked her what had happened. She said I was teaching the students the difference between mammals and fish. I told them that sharks are mammals and whales are fish. He interrupted me and told me I had made a mistake. I, of course, told him I was right, and he said, "Who gave you a diploma?" I told her I would talk to my son about his rudeness. I then called the principal and made an appointment to see him and the teacher together. In the meeting, I asked her to repeat her story and she did, still insisting that whales were fish and sharks were mammals. The principal just shook his head and said, "And I hired her. I did talk to my son about being polite to everyone, even if they are wrong." 2. My son was in 4th grade. He came home with a math paper that was marked F. I read through the problems and realized the answers were all correct. I called the teacher and he said that my son needed to show his work on the paper. I replied he didn't show his work because these problems are easy and he did them all in his head. I told him that if he wanted to take off some points for not explaining, that was one thing, but an F was completely unacceptable. In the course of the conversation, the teacher said son needs to recognize that 2 plus 2 does not always equal 4. I almost choked on my drink, spitting out I think it does always equal 4. The teacher went on a long rant about how he was an engineer who quit to teach math, and that I probably couldn't understand something so complex, but that he could write some computer modeling that would show that 2 plus 2 did not always equal 4. I took a deep breath, thought, "Thank you for mansplaining," and said, interestingly enough, my career is one of a system engineer. I spend my days creating and running computer models. I can assure you that if you input the same data each time, you will get the same result, i.e., 2 plus 2 will always compute to 4. It's only if you change the input data that you will get a different result. Of course, then that will be a new algorithm, and not the original 2 plus 2. At that point, I knew 4th grade math was going to be a lost cause for my gifted and talented 10-year-old, and told him to complete the work accurately and don't worry about the grade. 3. We had just moved back to Wisconsin from living abroad. I was called by my 2nd grade son's teacher at his new school to inform me that he wouldn't stop lying about living on a fictional island called Saipan. We came in to pick him up from school. The teacher pulled down a scroll map and showed us that he was pointing to an empty spot in the middle of the ocean called Saipan. We had the pleasure of informing her that her map was wrong and that indeed there is an island exactly where he indicated called Saipan, where we had just relocated from. Awkward, to say the least. 4. My daughter was in the 3rd grade and came home with a math assignment having to do with exponents. Now I am not a math person. That job belongs to her dad, who is a chemical engineer. I did notice, however, that she appeared to have confused the term cubed as being to the 4th power instead of the 3rd. When I pointed this out, she insisted vehemently that her teacher had taught her cubed was to the 4th power that very day. So, though my head was exploding, I could see that there was no point in arguing with her. It was time to hand this educational debacle over to the chemical engineer. My husband also did his best to convince our darling daughter of the fact that cubed is indeed to the 3rd power, but to no avail. At this point, she was very upset and tearfully said, "Daddy, if I do it the way you say, I will get it wrong, and I don't want to get it wrong." Her father assured her that her answer was correct, and told her that if she had any problems, he would have her back. We expected that to be the end of it. The next day she came home with red marks on her homework and an "I told you so" attitude. "See," she said, as she handed me the paper. My next step was to call my husband and explain the current state of affairs. He sent a very polite email to my daughter's 3rd grade teacher outlining some basic math facts for her review. We never got a response, but my daughter reported that her teacher at least returned to the lesson and taught the material correctly, after telling the class that there was a typo in the math book. 5. Not actually taught, but tested on. I have 3 smart children, but my son, who is on the autism spectrum, is really amazingly smart. At one point, as part of his IEP, the school decided they wanted to do IQ testing. They did the Woodcock-Johnson cognitive abilities test on him. When we got the results back, they said his combined IQ was 104. We were a little surprised and had them break it down for us. Turned out he did really badly on the general information section. So, being new to the Woodcock-Johnson test, we asked for examples of the types of questions and his answers so we could understand his deficit better. Here are the questions and answers they gave us. 1. The moon is in the sky? True or false? Tim said false, because the sky includes the atmosphere and it is in space, not the atmosphere. 2. Name 2 coins. Tim said Sacagawea dollar and Buffalo War nickel. Tim was a coin collector. They wanted penny, nickel, dime, quarter. 3. Why do your parents tell you to turn off the lights? Tim said that power is a finite resource because most are petroleum or coal-based and we need to not waste electricity when we can help it. They were looking for save money. We realized then that the school was not smart enough to test him. We got the school to send him to an external neuropsychologist and he tested above genius level. 6. We are Jewish, and we live in Oklahoma in the buckle of the Bible Belt. My daughter had a family living class in high school. A minister came to speak to the class one day, and he told them that families that had a Christian home had a lower divorce rate than families that did not have a Christian home. This was significant to me since I was not Christian and was divorced. I called the school principal and asked him to provide the documentation that Christian families had a lower divorce rate. The principal said that he would be glad to have a rabbi come to talk to the class. I told him that it was not necessary to have a rabbi talk to the class. I had no problem with a minister talking to the class as long as he did not give incorrect information to students in a public school in an effort to promote his own religion. The principal said that he would get the documentation that I had requested from the minister. The principal called me back 3 weeks later and said that the minister was unable to provide documentation to support what he had told the class. After multiple phone calls and pressure from me, the principal had the minister come back to the school, speak to the class, and retract what he had told them about Christian families having a lower divorce rate. 7. My daughter's 4th grade teacher took a dislike to her and thought to use her petty power to stick it to her. She sent her home with a note saying she was going to be assigned to the class for slower students because she was obviously incapable of managing mathematics. Just the day before, her math teacher, a different teacher, had sent her home with a report that in the computer-taught math curriculum, she was doing college-level math work. In the 4th grade, we showed up livid at the principal's office. We described our problem. The principal brought in the teacher, who started in with the whole, "I know it can be difficult to accept it when our children are not as capable as others." I took out the report from her math teacher and held it about 3 inches from the principal's eyes. She took the report, read it, and asked us to wait outside for a bit. After a short wait, she came out and asked us whether we wanted the teacher fired, or just to have our daughter placed in a different class. We opted for the latter, and asked that she monitor the situation, since if she was willing to do it to our daughter, there might be others miscategorized for spite as well. My daughter is now nearing 30 and has worked for nearly a decade for a major manufacturer as a mechanical engineer. I'm still damn angry about it. The inaccurate thing the teacher tried to teach her, that no one was going to stick up for her, so she had better knuckle under. That was inaccurate as hell, now wasn't it?